Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's #2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. And first up, we continue with our ongoing coverage of the HMPV outbreak situation in China, which we have been following for the past few weeks. Reports of rising cases of a flu-like illness in China, where COVID-19 was first discovered 5 years ago, has sparked international concerns about the potential for another worldwide pandemic. However, despite spreading numbers in China, as we have stressed on this channel, during this coverage, so far to date, there has been no solid evidence to suggest that the world is facing another global health emergency, though international health experts are watching the situation closely. HMPV is a common virus that has been around since at least 2001. Children under 5, particularly infants and adults over 65, especially those with health problems, can sometimes become seriously ill from the virus. However, for most other people, the symptoms are generally mild. Yesterday, China said cases of HMPV had declined among residents in its northern provinces. However, some health experts are slow to trust statements from Beijing and are calling for more transparency as risks remain. Dr. Ho Mei-sheng, a research fellow emeritus at the Institute of Biomedical Sciences in Taipei, in a statement this week expressed, quote, "International scholars are calling on China to disclose pathogen information and conduct genetic research to confirm that it is not a new virus. Even if it is an old virus, it could still be a new variant." End quote. I have been in almost daily communication with over a dozen contacts in hospitals across the country, and I've made personal visits to hospitals myself. Within China, though hospitals are seeing above average numbers of patients with flu symptoms, there still is no evidence of a widespread overwhelmed state. Early reports of such a situation appear to be exaggerated. Nevertheless, we continue to watch the situation closely. Now, while this current outbreak appears to be less serious than initially feared, there is another situation we need to cover which appears to be much worse than originally imagined. In a new paper published yesterday in Nature by Shanghai-based scientists and medical experts called "Resurgence of Common Respiratory Viruses and Mycoplasma pneumoniae After Ending the Zero COVID Policy in Shanghai," the authors argued that China's strict zero COVID policies, maintained for nearly 3 years, significantly impacted the circulation of respiratory pathogens. However, with the easing of these measures in late 2022, a resurgence of respiratory viruses and Mycoplasma pneumoniae has been observed, particularly among children in Shanghai. A study conducted from January 2022 through December 2023 enrolled 8,550 children hospitalized with acute respiratory infections. The researchers detected 9 common respiratory viruses and 2 atypical bacteria, revealing significant changes post-policy shift. In 2023, Mycoplasma pneumoniae became the dominant pathogen, 38.8%, overtaking rhinovirus, 14.2% in 2022. Detection rates increased substantially, 72.9% versus 41.8%, with a notable rise in mixed infections, 28.9% versus 23.8%. Interestingly, the report found that respiratory syncytial virus exhibited an out-of-season epidemic in spring and summer of 2023. The report underscored the urgent need for enhanced public health strategies to manage involving respiratory pathogen outbreaks in the post-pandemic era in China, warning, quote, "China is now facing multiple respiratory pathogen epidemics with changing seasonality, altered age distribution, and increasing mixed infection rates." End quote. Like I said, we will continue to follow the situation closely. Make sure you're subscribed so you can receive updates as they're released. Next up, we move to the Chinese economy. New loans issued by Chinese banks dropped for the first time in 13 years in 2024, reflecting tepid demand for financing in an economy grappling with deflation and a struggling housing market. According to the People's Bank of China, financial institutions issued 18.09 trillion yuan, $2.47 trillion in new loans last year, down from 2023, while aggregate financing grew at its slowest pace since 2021. The decline highlights subdued borrowing from households and businesses, despite Beijing's recent efforts to stimulate the economy. Medium to long-term household loans, a key measure of mortgage activity, fell to 2.25 trillion yuan, marking their lowest level in over a decade. Short-term loans to residents, often used for small business investments or consumption, dropped to 473 billion yuan, the weakest since 2008. Corporate borrowing also lagged, with medium to long-term business loans declining to 10.1 13.1 trillion yuan from 13.6 trillion yuan in 2023. While December showed signs of recovery, with aggregate financing climbing by 2.86 trillion yuan and new loans hitting their highest in 3 months, analysts still remain cautious. Zhao Pengxing, a senior strategist at ANZ Bank, in a note explains, quote, "Demand rebounded in December, supported by huge government financing. The worst time of credit has passed." End quote. So, of course, even if the December numbers look good, if this is being driven by government financing, it is not exactly a healthy reflection of the situation. As regular viewers know, policymakers face the challenge of spurring growth while managing risks of the currency and potential capital outflows. The government has stepped up bond issuance and pledged measures like interest rate cuts to bolster lending. However, weak non-government financing and persistent deflation underscore the need for stronger stimulus. With trade tensions and domestic demand concerns looming, China's recovery trajectory remains uncertain. Economists stress that assertive fiscal and monetary policies will be vital to support growth and counteract external shocks, including potential tariff hikes from the United States. And speaking of the United States, next up we move through US-China developments. But just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's episode of China Update, it's a tremendous help if you hit the like button. Liking, sharing, and subscribing is a huge help for the channel. This is a one-man band, but the support for the algorithm from you all is a tremendous help. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description for those who'd like to give a tip and help keep the channel financially sustainable. Thank you so much. Let's continue. Florida's Senator Marco Rubio delivered a sharp critique of China during his confirmation hearing for Secretary of State, framing the nation as a grave threat to American prosperity. In remarks to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on yesterday, Rubio accused Beijing of exploiting the global system for its benefit while ignoring its responsibilities. Quote, "We welcome the Chinese Communist Party into this global order," end quote, Rubio testified, adding, quote, "and they took advantage of all its benefits, but they ignored all its obligations and responsibilities. Instead, they have lied, cheated, hacked, and stolen their way to global superpower status at our expense," end quote. Rubio's remarks underscored his long-standing reputation as a China hawk and set the tone for an administration likely to adopt a more confrontational stance toward Beijing. His pointed rhetoric aligns with President-elect Donald Trump's promises to impose major tariffs on China and address trade imbalances. Rubio warned that without swift changes to the US foreign policy, the nation risks becoming dependent on China for critical needs, expressing, quote, "If we don't change course, we are going to live in a world where much of what matters to us on a daily basis, from our security to our health, will be dependent on whether the Chinese allow us to have it or not." End quote. In outlining his vision for the State Department, Rubio emphasized a return to prioritizing America's core national interests. Quote, "Every dollar we spend, every program we fund, and every policy we pursue must be justified with the answer to 3 simple questions. Does it make America safer? Does it make America stronger? Does it make America more prosperous?" End quote. Rubio's focus on China also extended to its economic practices, accusing Beijing of intellectual property theft, cyber attacks, and unfair trade practices that have undermined American interests and industries. His call for decisive action reflected a broader critique of globalism, which he argued has allowed adversaries like China to weaponize international systems against the United States. While Rubio's comments hinted at potential early clashes with Beijing, he tempered his assertiveness with a broader acknowledgement of America's responsibilities on the world stage. Quote, "Placing our core national interests above all else is not isolationism," end quote, he said, adding, quote, "What good to our allies is America if it is not strong," end quote. It confirmed Rubio was expected to play a key role in shaping US foreign policy, but his influence may be tempered by Trump's hands-on approach to global diplomacy. Despite this, Rubio's remarks signal that the new administration will pursue a tough, America-first strategy in addressing the challenges posed by China. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Thursday, and I will see you all tomorrow.